Shelby Morrison. Welcome, everyone. My name is Shelby Morrison. Aloha. I am the Programs and Communications Coordinator at ikahi Mediation Center. Welcome to our Finding Solutions Growing Peace Brown Bag Lunch Series. Ikahi is a nonprofit community mediation center serving East Hawaii. We were founded in 1983 as a program of the island of Hawaii's YMCA, and in 2006, we became our own independent nonprofit. We empower people to come together, to talk and to listen, to explore options, and to find their own best solutions. To achieve this mission, we offer mediation, facilitation, and trainings just like this one to strengthen the ability of diverse individuals and groups to resolve interpersonal conflicts and community issues. Our Brown Bag Lunch series is held every third Thursday at 12 noon right here on Zoom, and you have to register on Eventbrite for each one of those to get that Zoom link. As a notice of our next Brown Bag, which will be taking place next month on June 19th, and it will be with speaker Dr. Darlene Villano on the topic, the respect model, considering the whole person in mediation. So if you are a mediator and you'd like to brush up on your skills, this is one you don't want to miss. At the end of today's talk, we will ask you to fill out a short online survey, which helps with our grant funding for this free series. So when I put that survey link in the chat, please just take a minute to give us your thoughts. And I'll also send out that link as well as today's recording in an email. Without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful topic, cultivating peace building, building compassion and empathy in our communities. And our speaker, José Barzola, MBA, who creates social change through nonviolence and focusing on issues of belonging and connection. A higher education administrator with over 20 years of experience and success, Barzola has been an affiliate faculty teaching courses at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. For over 10 years, he has served the university, partner agencies, nonprofits, and communities in Hawaii and abroad as a professional mediator and facilitator. Take it away, Jose.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Shelby. It's truly an honor to be in community with you all. And thank you to everyone who's joining us from near and far. One thing I really love to just get to know is if you don't mind in the chat, just putting where you're joining us from today. I'd love to see how far, near and far we're able to reach and continue at the same time to build community. I know Shelby's over in Hilo and I'm over in Manoa right now in Honolulu. But without further ado, I do have a couple slides. I was back and forth about it, but I do know that we're all different types of learners and some of us really love visual learning. And so I have a little bit of stories, but I do encourage you to jump in and ask questions via the chat. If you want to unmute yourself, you'd rather do that, happy to do that as well. The work that I do, my life is pivoting. So I always welcome the opportunity to move a little slower or move a little to the left or the right or wherever I may need to be today. So with that being said, thank you all again. And I am conscientious of time as a facilitator, so I'll be keeping track of my own time today. But yeah, as mentioned, cultivating peace building, building compassion and empathy within our communities. I understand that what was stated as a description for today's event, I'll share briefly. It's something that I wrote up back in, I think, December, January. So a lot has transpired since then, locally, nationally, internationally. So I just want to start the premise with, we're not here to figure out world peace within the next hour, but hopefully we can take away some skill sets, some tools to add to our toolkit, and maybe some resources where we can continue to build and grow together as we strive to at least build peace within our own local communities. So whether it's a presentation, a workshop, a class I'm teaching. I always love to start out with some community guidelines. I think it is so essential, even if you're doing a meeting. This is just a little tip for anybody out there. Um, some folks like to call them ground rules. I'm not a big fan of that terminology, so I call them community guidelines. First off, acknowledging we're trying to create a brave space here. We're trying to go a little beyond a safe space. One of my students taught me that there's no such place that's truly safe, but hopefully through getting to know each other and through conversation and storytelling, we can create a brave space where we can feel comfortable to share with each other. I encourage active listening, which you're all doing a beautiful job of that already. Sharing your voice, respecting each other, including your time and others. No side conversations, including technology. I know we're constantly multitasking, and I know if you're eating your lunch, please enjoy. Buen provecho. I encourage feedback, talk about what has worked in the past, constructive criticism, focusing on solutions, not the problems. These are my standard community guidelines that I have. Just kind of set the pace moving forward. I think it's good anytime you get a good collective group of folks together uh, and get folks to agree that we're okay with this. So if anyone wants to change anything or add on to anything here, please feel free to, chime in. I'll let you know briefly that what I really love is when, and it kind of gives you a sense of like the group you're with. So I've had times where the group has been like, oh, let's make sure to, add fun to that. We're gonna have fun today, or we're gonna we're gonna have lots of food. So it gives you a context for, okay, this is gonna be a fun session, as opposed to, maybe something completely the other. So every step that you take is an opportunity to kind of assess the group that you're with and see what would be best. Um, so another thing that I normally don't add to here, but I always tell folks afterward is you always have the opportunity to pass. Don't feel as though any kind of question or centering activity means that is you're required to participate. You always have the opportunity to pass, although it's not listed on here. I have a couple centering activities this morning just because I sometimes folks like to call them icebreakers. Also, once more, terminology is important. Folks aren't really big fans of icebreakers, but centering activities. So I like to call it that. And so I always start with sharing the story of your name, what you do, and what brings you joy. Um, I'll share briefly for me the story of my name, and it's not so much the history of my name, but more the evolution of my name. My given name was and is José Luis Barzola Colmenares, and it's one that was given to me at a very, when I was born. But being an immigrant at a young age, and as many folks might be able to connect to this in some capacity, um, you had to adapt, you had to assimilate, acculturate. And so I chop my name up. My first name, Jose Luis, got chopped up into first and the middle name, and then I let go of my mom's maiden name. And so, with that being said, and it's one of those things that over time, possibly maybe in the past 15 years or so, I started, acknowledging the middle initial. I then, maybe 10 years ago, started adding the initial to the E to give homage to it. And then maybe possibly in the past year, I would say I started pronouncing it to folks. I'm here in front of you as Jose Barzola. So it's very nice to meet you all. What do? I love building collaborative communities, getting folks together, trying to find those bridges where we may not see it, trying to constantly always ask myself, is this a routine or is this something better that we can do here? And I'll go into that a little further in some of these activities. And what brings me joy, I would say our youth, or just youth in general, are just inspiring. And especially when, I'm like, I was not doing what you're doing at that age, and you're going to be okay. So it gives me calm and resilience to know that they're they're way ahead of where I was when I was their age. So, if anyone in the audience would love to share, you're welcome to. Or if you want to just continue enjoying your lunch, I'll continue on. But if anything, feel free to definitely bring this to your groups. I imagine when I use the centering activity, what I've learned is a lot of folks, even with like your best friends, your loved ones, like family gatherings, like have you ever had an opportunity to have a conversation around this? Most folks have not had the opportunity to do so. Another one that I really love to showcase a little bit lately is Nyanya, Let's Go Home. It was a project that I developed in collaboration between the United States Institute of Peace and Fulbright University in Vietnam about almost 3 years ago now. Uh, it was around the concept of home. So home comes at the end of a conversation, a long day, a migration, or a journey. It is spoken between parents and children, lovers, relatives, neighbors, and friends. It is both a question and a statement, a wish, a hope. It shines a light on the places we call home and asks us to go there together. I share this with you because I think this might be another wonderful, centering activity you can do with you know, group of coworkers, group of friends, complete strangers. And some of the questions that come along with that is, what is home to you? For myself, home is not a place where I grew up because I have moved around a lot. To me, home is where my loved ones are. So it's not just here in Hawaii, uh, it's also on the East Coast. It's also in Peru. Even when I say Hawaii, I don't mean just here in Honolulu. I've had wonderful, interactions and community building right in Kona and in Maui. And so I consider those part of my concepts of home, being able to build community or reminds me of home, or reminds you of home. Something else to kind of consider, is there possibly a certain smell or taste? This is where we get into like maybe foods or like, that morning dew or that, cup of coffee or tea that folks love to have. How has home shaped your lived experience? How has home shaped your perspective on life? One of the things I always share is conflict tends to happen because one, people aren't talking to each other, actual like tone of voice, and also we're not making space for different lived experiences. Sometimes we get so centered in this is our lived experience and this is, oh, why are people not seeing it this way? So just taking the time to pause, step back, and acknowledge what is the lived experience that folks may have had. You could have twins who grew up in the same room and they are seeing life very differently. They could have a very different concept of home. So I just kind of share that with you today. So pathways to peace building is what we'll get into over the next few slides. Trying to definitely find inclusive pathways to peace building. What areas have we not explored yet? How do we build bridges for the gaps? I've talked about some of these already, but we'll delve a little further into them. Building healthy, positive relationships, which is something I really love to talk about. Focusing on everyday conversations, the art of storytelling, or talk story, as we say here in Hawaii. Uh, so inclusive pathways to peace building. So you're like, what is this peace building thing? And everyone has a different, I think that's the beauty of it. Peace can mean different things to everyone, and peace building or peacemaking, peacekeeping, the terminology you chose to go with, that's up to you to decide. I go with peace building just because, based on its own definition, it is more grassroots in being embedded within a community and understanding that, hey, I'm going to work with this community, but when I step back and leave, they can kind of do their own thing. I'm not here keeping or making peace, which many times, unfortunately, with history, if you look at political warfare as happened historically. Many times there's language around like, we're going to send the troops to keep the peace, to make peace. And then when they leave, peace does not last. And so that's kind of, but also inclusive pathways is really looking at, it's not just about DI, it's going beyond that. And it's not just about, you know, who are the overall underrepresented communities out there? Not just people of color, there's people who have accessibility issues, and the list goes on and on. And so this is just a brief image to just thinking about, what inclusive pathways do we not have set up? I know we do a beautiful job to provide resources to our community, but sometimes, some folks are left behind. And that's where the conversations, the everyday conversations. So a lot of these kind of intertwine with each other. What areas have we not explored yet? This is where you try to think outside the box a little, or you may have heard that terminology, or think differently, different perspectives once more. This is one silly example I give, and because recently it kind of came to my attention, is like, when is a banana the healthiest? Does anyone know? When is it better when it's green, when it's slightly green and yellow, when it's, got the black dots on it already? Um, and it's okay if you all have different answers, and that's quite okay, because the answer is technically, according to this, it's good at all stages. It's just a matter of, do you want more fiber? Do you want more sugar? you know, Ideal for diabetics, or is it better for a pre-workout snack? So I provide you, I know it's a silly image, but I'm providing this to you just because this was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, talk about like shifting your perspective. Because we always think like, oh no, they're green, we need to wait till they're yellow, without realizing like, oh, maybe if they're green with just a little yellow, maybe we should be exploring that a little better. Uh, Taste it, if it tastes good, and or if you're looking for those types of benefits. So how do we build bridges for the gaps? So one example is bridging the communication gap. It's important for language proficiency, cultural sensitivity. Do you have a translator, interpreter, using technology as a facilitator, understanding the limitations of technology as well, and the importance of context, in practicing empathy and active listening. Uh, it can go really far. Words matter. The key words that we utilize are very important, especially I'll say for myself, as English as a second language. I try to be very conscientious of the words that I'm using on an everyday basis. Building healthy, positive relationships. I think this is something that when people ask me, like, what does peace building mean to me? I always talk about building healthy, positive relationships. Because to me, it's about, what do you need for that? Compassion, trust, respect, fun. There's intimacy, there's care, there's forgiveness, honesty, and so much more that's not listed here. But it has to start somewhere, because if you think about when you're going through a really hard time, and you're like, oh, I hope everyone has someone that they can call, text, message, that will pick up, or at least within a few seconds of you reaching out to them will be like, oh, everything okay? Or I'll let me call you back or reach out to you in a few minutes. And you think about the shared experiences. What are the shared experiences that you've had to lead you to this beautiful relationship that you have with this other person? Um, it's most likely that maybe you went to the movies, and then you had a conversation about it afterward. You went to an athletic event, or you were in classes together. Uh, what I'm getting at is acknowledging the shared experiences, not only that you had, but then that you had a debrief about afterward. And also simultaneously thinking about, what other shared experiences have I had that I haven't, a missed opportunity to build that relationship. I doubt when you go to a group meeting for your job, folks want to come together and be like, hey, let's have a conversation about what the meeting was about. Um, because I think getting folks together for a meeting is normally, what an honor to have people's time for that. And many times, what I have heard and found is that many times that there is an office meeting, it ends up being a checklist. It could have been something that could have been emailed to you and you could have just read up on. And instead utilize that time coming together to get to know each other. Use some of those centering activities to get to know the folks that you're actually, spending a majority of your day with. So, focusing on everyday conversations. So, inclusive language, kind of going back to how important that is, spouse, significant other, partners, guardians, parents, caregivers. We can't assume that everyone has had a mom and dad growing up, children, um, being gender inclusive within our terminology. So there's some tips there. Also when greeting others, thanks friends, good morning folks, hi everyone, and for you. It probably getting away. I know one of the biggest pet peeves is like the terminology like guys. People just use it as like everyday vernacular, but there people notice, and you never know who's in the audience. You may have just lost your audience before you even got into, some really good information because you use some terminology that shut down the conversation already. So just be mindful of language. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And if you don't know how best to address someone, just ask. It's always okay to ask. Um, I love having this slide here just because I found over time, many of us don't know our conflict styles. It's not something that, we talk about in class, K through 12 or at university, unless you took a class in peace and conflict. And so as you look at these five different styles, there might be some that are you're like, oh, I'm a little bit more connected to this one than the other one, or oh, I know some people that do this. But really, the best way to read this is if relationships are really important and the goal that you're trying to achieve is really important, you want to try to explore collaboration. It is easier said than done. And sometimes, and it's okay if you don't explore collaboration all the time, because sometimes maybe the space, it's not a brave space to do that. It's not a safe space to do that. uh so yeah, so just assessing situations would be best, but I just wanted to let folks know conflict styles. Another perspective, going back to that conversation that we had about earlier, but most problems would not exist if we understood the difference between an argument and discussion. So are we actually trying to find out who's right, the I, the ego, or are we trying to figure out what's actually right for the community as a whole? And I think if we can lean more toward what is actually right for everyone, now we can actually have a conversation. Because otherwise we're you know, just seeing one perspective basically. Maybe just seeing the boats, or maybe just seeing the bridge above it. Active listening, you're all doing a beautiful job with that already. So I, there's a slide, and just being an active listener and all the importance of that, and understanding also the cultural context of that, because making eye contact is not okay. In some cultures, it is a bit disrespectful. So just being aware of the space and the context that you're in. I love having this slide on here just because how do we cope? How do we take care of ourselves? And it's intentionally not written out as like, oh, be in a group with people or cry or go through emotions, because it's open to interpretation. But I think some of the important things for to just let folks know is that there are 24/7 hotline numbers if you are truly in crisis and need to talk to someone, someone to listen, and then there's a plethora of other ways to cope. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna go through a couple of things. I kind of came up with this terminology of peace building initiatives, which are just programs that I've been involved in here through my job at the university. I developed some of them, and some are just through my collaboratives out in the community. As it says, collaborative ways of developing healthy, positive relationships through dialogue, cross-cultural understanding, and exploring ways to shift our own perspective to build compassion and empathy within our communities. And with that, some things that we've done over the past 2 years, something called cross-cultural conversations, where there's a class at AK University in Hiroshima. There's 30 students from different parts of Japan and different parts of the world as well who join in. And then we have a plethora of speakers, and then we invite students and community here from Hawaii and beyond to join in as well. So to just learn about different perspectives on peace, which I think is ever so important to create that awareness about. And it's also an opportunity to, once more, going back to the perspectives, and we have a conversation about human rights. Um, we may understand maybe what the United States perspective is on human rights, and maybe some folks might have learned what the Japanese perspective might be. But then when we have a student from Senegal or Malaysia, are showcasing their perspective, which is going to be completely different. And so understanding the context of that. Community dialogues is another one that we've done for the past 2 years. It's very similar to like Polina circles or restorative justice circles. It's really an opportunity to get people to come together to have conversation. And the greatest feedback we've gotten from this programming is that just people thankful for the opportunity to come together to talk to each other. Because especially within a university landscape, you go to class, you kind of get talked to, or if you work in groups, it's around a certain topic. And if you're in a club meeting, similar, also there's always an agenda. But in this case, yes, we have different titles and there's different themes, but we just have a lot of open-ended questions, and it's just an opportunity to kind of share from there. And so like the centering activity around the concept of home, that was one that we've done in the past. And then there's plethora of more. So yeah, so just kind of sharing for folks to, if you want to bring it to your own communities, I think there's a lot of wonderful opportunities to get to know each other better. Uh, been very thankful to be supporting the annual peer mediation conference, which is just being able to, connect with youth, many times high school students, sometimes middle school students who are learning peer mediation skills at such a young age to be able to assist their peers on the conflicts that may arise. And then there's the coordinators that assist. This is on Oahu. I do know that on the other islands, there's also ample and active uh, assistance and training and development of peer mediation programs. So it is just kind of like a personal project, and it's just amazing some of the work that's being done there. Um, there's a YouTube channel, there's a podcast, just the art of conversation, and it just keeps growing and growing. So I believe everyone here will be getting a copy of the slides, so you can go through these a little later. And then I do have an exhibit opening up at the Hamilton Library Bridge Gallery at Shadows of the Future, the Impact of Nuclear Weapons on Children. So if you happen to be um, in Honolulu between August 1st to October 31st. You can come check that out. It is the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombing on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's a three-part exhibit, partially the Sadako and the Thousand Crane Project. So that's an exhibit that was donated by the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. There will be a couple images donated by the Nagasaki Museum, and then also something called the Marshallese Art Project, which are poetry and artwork by um, everywhere from third graders to undergrads, students in the Marshall Islands, and it depicts their emotions and feelings as a result of the testing that was done in the Marshall Islands. And so some additional tips out there. There is the Matsunaga Institute for Peace here at the University of Hawaii, which has a grad certificate in conflict resolution, which can be done in person and online. I know it says apply by March 31st, but I believe they're still accepting applications for the fall. I do teach in the program, both graduate and undergrad courses. Yeah, so just kind of providing some of that. I do know that the Ring mediation centers also do offer training in mediation. So I know Shelby and other folks can give you more information on that. Some of them are in person, some of them are online, or a combination of both. Um, just a shameless plug for some of my classes that I'm teaching this summer. So if anyone's interested, there's still space. So look forward to one thing I mentioned is the classes I teach are online asynchronous, which um, many moons ago, I heard about how online asynchronous is such an awkward way to build community. And so I kind of, once more, bridging the gap. I've really loved exploring ways to build community in an online asynchronous format. This is actually my 8th summer teaching these classes. And yeah, just having some really good conversations. I think maybe the topics, but I think also just structuring the class in a way that folks can come together and get to know each other a little better. And many times the feedback I get is actually um, they get to know their classmates better through these online asynchronous courses than they would have through an in-person class. Or many times in-person classes, many times we walk into a room, we've already made preconceived judgments just by however people may appear to us. And so in an online setting, it's once more, and I'm step back and, oh, what are people actually contributing to the conversation? And that kind of shapes your perception of folks. So yeah, just a little different way to think about things. Uh, Local nonprofit called Seeds of Peace. They have a workshop series coming up this fall and I guess January of next year, 3-part workshop series. I don't believe the registration's up yet. And yeah, it's just been a wonderful, humbling experience to work with them as a facilitator for quite some time now, 8, 9 years, I believe. And what I really love about the program or the workshop is being able to work with folks who have shared experience, shared intentions of wanting to build a better world for our youth, but also just the framework that's kind of listed here. We envision our harvest. What is the goal, that we'd love to develop without starting to think about like what are the barriers first? That's like the second step. And then what are the seeds, who do we need? Who do we need to collaborate with? And then lastly, also like sustainability. Like, how do we make sure, and this happens in so many organizations, you have folks that develop some amazing projects and then it turns out that they, get another job, they move on, whatever happens. And it's not as though the community no longer needs those resources. It's just it stops happening, continuing because, the leadership's not there. So making sure that whatever projects we develop for our communities can live beyond us being physically there. I think that's a great sign of leadership in itself. So yeah, if you want to learn more about the process and meet some other wonderful folks, they're going to be on Oahu though, just letting folks know. Also, wonderful local nonprofit, the Conflict Resolution Alliance, which I've had the honor of being on the board of since 2018 and also past present. Just a wonderful opportunity to come together with other mediators, facilitators, as well as folks just interested in going into the field. We recently got a mentoring program off the ground. The organization has been around in an evolution of names since probably like the 80s. But yeah, it's just for folks who are mediators or facilitators and have not connected, you have probably found the field can be a very lonely experience. And so this is an opportunity to kind of come together with community. And yeah, so I share a little bit about them. I also happen to have the honor of being on the board for the Maui Historical Society, or Hale Ike at the Bailey House. And this has just been, once more, one of those opportunities where I connected with some folks on Maui and have collaborated with them. And then they reached out about this opportunity, and I saw it as uh, even though I don't live on Maui, I see it as a beautiful opportunity to get to know the community further and get to truly see what are the issues impacting them. And if I have some resources or if I can provide assistance, that's what I do. So yeah, just finding ways. Once more, I talked about the Nyanya project earlier on with the centering activity. Another one we did the following year was a Viet dialogue, similar to community dialogues, talking about, within the Vietnamese community specifically. And then, yeah, so just some concluding thoughts. I think it's important to not only, I talked about building relationships to bridge the gap, leading to discomfort, but also just practicing gratitude and reflection along our path. I think whether I find a new job, whether move somewhere, it's always great to just, any achievement that you reach, just reflecting upon how did you get there? Who was the village that kind of uplifted you? And connecting with that village, I think, is ever so important. So I just kind of went through these. So I'm going to stop sharing now and look forward to getting to know the community that's here with us today a little further. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. All right, it looks like we're opening it up a little bit. So let's widen this discussion. We're here to talk about peace building in our community. So if you have thoughts, ideas, questions, if you want to join us in this conversation, please, we welcome you to either raise your hand, or if you want to pop in, feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to join us on the chat as well. And Jose, you can always give them like if there's like a specific thing you want from them, like a specific idea or a question that we're trying to.
Well, I just want to thank you all definitely for the opportunity to be here in community with you all. I am happy to have all types of conversations. I would have, if anyone wants to share, about any, as it relates to any centering activity we've done before, but yeah, there's really great opportunities to just build community in your everyday conversations and folks that you meet on an everyday basis, whether it's you go to your local farmers market, get to know the folks that are there, where are they coming from? What's their story? I think not just talking about creating a brave space within large meetings, but your everyday space that you go to. I think about, you know, uh, with our youth, I'm a father of two, and it's actually been wonderful just talking about the farmers market because that was part of my experience this morning, and thinking about the relationship that I built there, and the fact that they're right down the street from where my kids go to school, and so if my kids ever pass by, it's not as though I do it for their benefit, but it's nice sometimes to hear like, oh, we got some free bananas from Uncle so and so. And so I think especially one thing I've learned in my time here in Hawaii is the island gets smaller. Islands get smaller the longer you're here. There's more of an opportunity to realize how it's less than a degree of separation for most folks that are here today. So everyone's so shy. Oh, hand up. Yes, please go right ahead, Natalie.
Jose, thank you so. That was a brilliant presentation. You shared so many wonderful things. I can't remember. I have to reflect back on them, and I look forward to the slides. And I'm sorry that I have my camera off. It's 8:30 a.m. in Australia, so I haven't even had breakfast yet. But I especially loved the exercise, the very first question you asked. And as I wanted to share, but it also made me reflect so much. My name being Natalie sounds very English, but I was actually born in Palestine, in Jerusalem, and my father chose my name because I was born at Christmas time, so I was going in and out of. Apparently, my mum reminds me every year, you you took me to the French hospital on the 24th, and then we were back home again. Then you took me again on the 25th, and we're back again. Anyway, I eventually came out on the 27th. So Natalie meaning child of Christmas. But the thing is, if you had asked me this question 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, when we had been in Australia, we immigrated here 40 years ago, I probably wouldn't have shared the answer because growing up as a Palestinian and then immigrating into Australia, it was very difficult. It's sadly, only in the last year and a half that I have actually felt more comfortable to share some of my story, my background. And a lot of it came because my children also would confront me and ask, why do I not talk about it? So peace building and the idea of peace is very close to my heart. But I especially love that question because I think it's such a lovely way to help people to connect with one another, feel special, feel important, because I'd like to think that everybody's name has a meaning and meaning for themselves, not just literal meaning, but for them, a special meaning. So that was just beautiful way to start. So thank you. And I just love your work. I think, we met a few years ago and I'd love to know more. And I thank you so much for that information you shared. It's just brilliant.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate your kind words, and I look forward to connect. I think we've been trying to connect for quite some time
Yes,
now. So
we have and we will. And yes, we
yes,
will. We
yes.
will. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being up so early. I appreciate you.
Any other questions for Jose? This is a big topic, you know, we're all we're in the world we're all living in right now. And so connecting with our neighbors can be a little challenging because there's a lot of topics and a lot of passions and a lot of emotions. So if any of this came up for anyone, anything in particular that, you know, a reason why you decided to attend this brown bag today, is there any specific questions that maybe Jose can shed some light on?
Hi, I can say something.
Hi, Kevin.
Yes.
I just would say that you know, I run the neighborhood watch in my neighborhoods. We had some squatter troubles, and I was like dragged into doing that. Plus, I'm the president of our basically what's our Chamber of Commerce. It's the Pahoa Main Street Association, and you know, there's a lot of you know, we're a kind of a challenged area of Hawaii, the most challenged, you know, economically and such. So, you know, I just want to thank you for affirming things that, you know, I try to do and, you know, lead me to keep these concepts in mind because, you know, especially with the neighborhood watch, you know, my neighbors are, if something happens, everyone's like so quick to call the police, you know, call the police. Well, you know, I'm finding that, you know, reasoning with people, you know, connecting with them, you know, everyone from, you know, battling mothers and sons to, you know, street people really is much more effective than calling the police. It's just not what we're used to. So keep it up. And I appreciate hearing this because sometimes I get kind of frustrated. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, for all you do. I know it's not easy, and I know that's not one of those responsibilities where you're like, oh, where's my paycheck at the end of the week kind of thing. So it is a passion project. And so thank you. I know it probably goes not seen, but I hope acknowledged. Most definitely for the good work you're doing.
It is. I mean, you know, the neighbors are appreciative, the businesses are appreciative in town, and you know, the biggest problem is that you know there's not more people who think to step up, and I think it's got a lot to do with our perceptions of you know, resolution, whereas you know people don't really think about mediation; they think about force. So you know, keep spouting what you're saying.
Yeah,
Say
yeah,
it
no.
farm
Unstable times to say the least. But yeah, finding community has been very powerful during these times of instability, and just knowing that we're not alone. There's other folks also challenged this day. So thank you. I know we had a question in the audience of explaining more about online asynchronous. So I would say, so it's just a teaching style. So folks, it doesn't mean that synchronous means that folks would have to log in at a certain time to take a class. Asynchronous just means that it's on their own time. There are deadlines, but it's not as though on a daily basis you need to log on a certain time for the class. That's what I mean by that. And so yeah, so it's very different than an in-person course, and so most folks tend to be very averse to it. But I think there's a lot of power in open-ended questions, and I encourage folks to practice that more. You know, yes, the active listening, the reframing is important too. And these are all wonderful skill sets we all use as mediators and facilitators, but just bringing some of that into your everyday conversations is ever so important.
Thank you. That was my question.
We have another comment here. Or any other questions folks may have? Look forward to getting to know the community better. Someone talked about the importance of peace building, but also becoming very intentional about seeking community to not just survive, but to thrive in these times. Local coffee shop has become a second home. Yeah, yeah. definitely. Finding spaces where you can connect with folks is so essential, to just have those conversations. I would say the majority of conflicts that come to me are when folks are not actually talking to each other. Um, Someone shows me an email or a text chat chain, and I'm like, well, I'm like, have you tried actually calling the person? Because that might go a big way to figuring out what was the tone of the message that they actually sent over. So yeah, just finding that middle ground. Um,
Okay, Jose, I have a question. So, I'm fully in agreement. I think compassion and empathy are really that's the way to connect with people, right? I mean, you just put yourself in someone else's shoes and instantly your perspective can really drastically change. And so as we've mentioned, we're kind of coming into, we're, kind of in a divided time right now, and empathy and compassion are, I mean, they've always been needed, but now more than ever, when there seems to be this competitiveness, so what would you say would be, maybe your number one tip for putting yourself, pulling yourself out of competition, or needing to be right, or needing your opinion to be the one the other person believes? And what would you suggest for going immediately into empathy and compassion, so that those conversations that you do want to initiate can have the legs to make it all the way through, but it has to start with that compassion? So how do you suggest we initiate that empathy and compassion right from the get-go when we might be a little
Good question. I think if emotions are high already, maybe we want to just take a step back and kind of collect ourselves. I would say sometimes just providing the space for folks to be heard. Practice that active listening with folks. I have found, sadly, I've found folks that are much older than me who have never had the opportunity to be heard. The way our systems are set up many times, think about traditional education, K through 12. You go to a classroom, you're informed of information. Okay, I then adapt to the way that something has to be written or exam has to be taken. I then go off to college, possibly. Maybe some of that continues. There's a cycle. And then I get a job where then I'm told what I need to do. So there's a cycle of me constantly being told of what to do. Rarely have I been asked for my opinion on something. And so, yeah, just providing that space for folks to be able to have that, I think, is so essential. Um, Sometimes you can, best way to show compassion and empathy is by doing that exactly. Just getting to know folks, even if sometimes it might start simple, like, talking about the weather, that kind of stuff. Or I always just try to, like, folks go into an elevator. Everyone's always awkward in the elevator looking at their phones, like, I I always like to mention, like, oh, because most elevators don't have music, and I'm like, they do in the movies. Uh, but I sometimes just use that as like a form to like break the ice. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had some music? What kind of songs do you think they'd be playing or something like that? Just adding some humor into everyday life. So yeah. I think it takes time, definitely building those relationships. But I think in the long run, I found it, and I wouldn't say you should be like building relationships to like get something out of it in the long run. I'm not saying that. I think just for the everyday goodness of your soul, I think, to build community. But I see Robert has his hand up, and he's been waiting patiently. Robert, you there? Oh, I think we lost. Oh, he's muted right now.
Okay, am I unmuted now finally?
Yes.
You're good.
Welcome, Robert.
Yeah, I'm doing this from my helping out a friend deep in the valley of Kalihi. We're doing some work. I took a break from from that. So I'm in my car using my phone, which I'm not used to using on a Zoom meeting. But you know, well, to be a little more specific on addressing people who we disagree with, I find that it's like, oh, you must have a good reason to support such and such. Help me understand more. Tell me more, and actually be willing to listen to that, because they may have a different reason, but they may have a very good reason. I think X, Y, and Z is a better person to keep this nation safe or this city safe, or I like, you know, I met him personally. So tell me more, you know. When we try to change people's mind by pushing them, it's like pushing an anchor. The more you pull it, the deeper it goes. So if you push people, you're never going to get the results. But if you allow them, you know, and with empathy, active listening, reframing, labeling, all of those tools that you know that are taught in good mediation trainings, that they'll open up, and they may never change their mind, but at least they'll become a little less firm in their beliefs many times, that they're willing to open up. So, you know, and I know that you're familiar with this, Jose. We talk about this a lot, but those tools, to be specific, is to actually engage them. You know, I want to know, you know, you know, now I avoid the question why, because when you ask people why, it's accusatory and it's thing, but help me understand, you know, your needs here. I want to understand your needs here and how that is, you know. If you ask them why you thinking that, you really turn them off. So thank you for giving me the time to speak.
No, thank you for bestowing us with some wonderful wisdom and knowledge. I appreciate it. And I think, so for folks who don't know, Robert's actually on the board also for the Conflict Resolution Alliance, longtime mediator as well, doing some wonderful things in the community. And I've been with the organization for, like I said, since 2018. And one of the things that keeps me there and what I love about it is every time we have a board meeting, it's 90 minutes, but it's the most impactful, effective 90 minutes I've ever had. And we still have, so because everybody there is a trained peace builder, mediator, facilitator. And so we're constantly like practicing the active listening, the reframing, and Robert's rules as well. Not necessarily Robert's actual rules, but Robert's rules of orders. And but also there's also time there to just have talk story, to get to know each other, check in on each other before and after. So I think as I shared earlier about, you know, getting folks together is such an honor. And so respecting that honor by building those relationships through the shared collaboration, I think, and so that's one of the things I truly have appreciated about the organization, and I hope, yeah, I think these brown bag series do a similar thing, as it's been going on for quite some time, and folks keep coming back, and so it's great to see familiar faces and new faces as well. To be in community, even in an online setting, right? Like this is something that definitely would one of the positive things that came out of the global pandemic. So that's one of I didn't talk about this, but you know, I try to stay optimistic, whatever challenges may come my way. Yes, I'm not going to say I don't go through the stages of grief and process emotions. I do, but I also in retrospect and reflection and practicing gratitude, I try to think about like, well, what's the positive side of things here? So, and so it gives me perspective and patience and hope as we move through these unstable, challenging times.
Hey, Jose, am I still on mute?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. You know, the last meeting we had, which was a couple days ago at the CRA, I'm going to give a plug for it. We don't only share each other's success and attaboys, we share people's disappointments that things didn't turn out the way. And one of our folks shared the disappointment in one of the issues of mediation is domestic violence. and they didn't feel like the new guidelines addressed it as well as they could have, but they felt like the product was good enough, but they wish it was better. So we try to work with each other to find ways forward, even when we're not. It's a great community. I would say it's a great community because we're willing to share. Like, yeah, one of the members, or more than one of the members, was disappointed that more wasn't said about such a critical, not a critical issue, but an important issue in the mediation. That how do you deal with that subject? Now, somebody said something beautiful, that, hey, mediation may not be the best forum, but the courts are even worse. So we do what we can with what we have. And I really enjoyed that session. I get a lot from. So I am encouraging anybody who's interested to really check out. And we invite people before they join to check out our, join the board, check out our board meetings before you want to be a board member. You can see if this is a community that you'd like. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, how are we feeling? I think we might be ready to wrap up. This was a wonderful, wonderful session. I hope everyone learned a little bit that they can take away today about peace building in your community. There's so much happening on this island, and we may be small, but we are very powerful. So if any of the places that Jose mentioned, any of the courses or membership programs or anything that you can get involved in, if that sounds interesting, feel free to reach out to Jose to learn more, because the more people are involved, the better these little community networks can really be. So thank you so much, Jose, for joining us and for sharing all of this information. Thank you to everyone who chose to attend. As a reminder, please just take a few minutes to fill out our short online survey, which greatly helps funding for these free series. And you can find that in the chat. I will also be sending out tomorrow a recording of today's session, as well as the PDF slides and a link to that survey. Thank you so much. Aloha, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Shelby. Take care, everyone.